They called her the Angel Nurse. Families requested her by name. Patients relaxed when she walked into the room. Even the doctors trusted her instincts during the night shift. On paper, she was everything a hospital could want. But then, the statistics started to shift. More deaths, faster declines. And almost every time a code was called on the fourth floor, she was there, standing at the bedside, smiling softly, telling everyone it was their time to go. No one wanted to believe what the numbers were saying. Until one night, a new nurse noticed something the others had trained themselves not to see. Something the Angel Nurse did right before her patient's heart stopped.
The story takes place in a regional hospital, tucked just outside a busy city. It isn't the kind of place that makes the news. It doesn't have a famous research wing or a glossy advertisement campaign. Administrators prefer it that way. By day, the fourth floor looks almost ordinary. Post-op patients, chronic illnesses, a few long-term cases waiting on placement. Families come and go with coffee cups and overnight bags, and the nurses move quickly from room to room, doing the quiet work that keeps people alive. At night, the tone changes. The lighting drops, the hallways thin out, machines sound louder than voices. That's when she is on duty. Her name is Grace, but almost no one calls her that. To the families who gather at bedsides, the ones who are terrified of bad news, she's known by another name whispered like comfort: the Angel Nurse. She has the kind of presence that calms a room the moment she walks in. Soft voice, gentle hands, a way of leaning in when people speak, as if their words matter more than the time on the clock. She holds hands during blood draws. She tucks extra blankets around shivering shoulders. She remembers names, favorite drinks, small details from passing conversations. When patients are in pain, she always seems to arrive with the right medication at the right moment. When families start to cry, she's there with tissues and a soothing explanation. Some nurses are good, one family member once said in the hallway. She's something else. She's an angel. The nickname stuck. Staff repeated it with a mix of affection and mild embarrassment. They'd roll their eyes at the phrase, but no one really disagreed. On the surface, there was no reason to. Grace's charting was meticulous. Her patients reported feeling safe with her. She floated effortlessly between rooms in the quiet hours when fear tends to get louder. When a patient was actively dying, families often asked, "Is the Angel Nurse working tonight?" They wanted her there. They trusted her to make things easier, or at least less horrifying. So when a new hire came to the fourth floor, a younger nurse named Emily, fresh from orientation and still learning the rhythm of night shift, she was told the same thing everyone hears at the start. If you ever feel overwhelmed, just watch how Grace handles her patients. You'll learn a lot. Emily believed that. At first. Because in the first few weeks, all she saw was a graceful, composed nurse. The Angel Nurse smiling gently at families, touching shoulders, staying calm when others panicked. It took time before Emily started to notice something else. Not in the way Grace spoke or in the way she moved, but in the way the numbers on the unit's whiteboard began to change on the nights when Grace was assigned to certain rooms. Deaths logged as expected, declines marked as sudden but not preventable. Nothing that looked wrong on paper, nothing anyone could point to directly. Just a quiet pattern forming in the background, like a shadow that only shows up when you step back far enough to see the whole floor at once. And Emily was about to be the one who stepped back far enough to see it.
Night shift on the fourth floor runs on patterns. vitals rounds at the top of the hour, medication passes, blood work pickups. The occasional call from the ER asking if there's an available bed. Most nights follow a familiar rhythm. Busy until around midnight, a strange, fragile quiet in the early hours, and then the slow build toward morning labs and physician rounds. Emily is still learning this rhythm. In her first month, she's careful. She double-checks her MAR before giving meds. She rereads orders. She asks questions when something doesn't feel right. On the nights she works with Grace, she feels a little safer. Grace always seems a step ahead of everyone else. If a patient starts to look pale, she's already at the bedside, adjusting oxygen. If someone begins to cry, she's there with a chair and a calm explanation. Emily notices how often families seek Grace out. They stop her in the hallway to thank her, and bring her coffee. Some even hug her at the end of a shift. By contrast, Emily still feels like a stranger moving through someone else's territory. One night, during a lull around 2:15 a.m., Emily stands at the nurse's station updating her notes. The whiteboard in front of her lists the patients by room number. There are colored magnets for fall risk, isolation, diet. In the corner of the board, someone has drawn a little winged figure next to a few room numbers. Angel rooms, a nursing assistant jokes quietly, walking by. The ones that she's taking care of tonight. Emily smiles. But as she looks closer, she sees something else. Two of the rooms with the wing symbol also have a small D next to the name, written in dry erase marker and then half erased. At first she thinks it means discharged, but the census doesn't match that. Those patients aren't gone. They're crossed off because they died. D for deceased. The names have been wiped away, but the faint outline of the letter is still there. The wings weren't erased. That could mean nothing. The board gets messy. People write on top of old marks all the time. Still, it sticks in his mind. A few nights later, Emily gets her first real taste of how the others talk about Grace when they think no one is listening. It happens near the medication room, just after a code has been called on an elderly patient with multiple conditions. The resuscitation fails, the patient is pronounced. Grace is there, like she usually is, calmly straightening the bed after the body is taken away, helping the family with quiet, sympathetic phrases. It was peaceful, she tells them. She didn't suffer. They cling to her words like a lifeline. Later, as Emily restocks a cart, I hear two staff members talking in low voices just outside the door. One more on Grace's watch. She's on a streak. Don't say that, the other replies quickly. They were all end-of-life cases. Yeah, it's just funny, isn't it? How they all seem to go when she's on. Emily steps out, and they both fall silent.
It starts with the small things. Tiny details that could mean nothing, but once Emily notices them, she can't unsee them. One night, shortly after 1 a.m., Emily is documenting at the nurse's station when a soft chime sounds from down the hall. Room 418. She checks the board. That's one of Grace's patients, an older man with advanced heart failure, DNR in place, prognosis poor. The call light goes on, then off. Emily watches as Grace glides past the station with a syringe in hand, her expression calm and focused. 418? Emily asks, almost automatically. Grace nods. He's pretty uncomfortable, she says, just giving him something to help him settle. Her tone is gentle. Her voice is almost apologetic, as if she's sorry the patient has to suffer at all. A few minutes later, Emily sees the door to 418 closed. No visitors tonight, just Grace inside. Time passes. No alarms, no frantic calls. Then, at 1:47 a.m., the overhead speaker crackles. Rapid response, room 418. Emily's heart jumps. She heads toward the room, but by the time she gets there, the team is already inside. The patient is unresponsive. The monitor is showing a rhythm that doesn't last. They work, but the energy in the room is flat. Everyone knew this was coming, eventually. He's pronounced not long after. Grace stands at the bedside, her head bowed, one hand resting briefly on the sheet near his arm, as if saying a private goodbye. Later, back at the station, Emily glances at the electronic MAR. The last medication given is recorded a few minutes before the decline, within ordered parameters, correct dosing, correct time. On paper, nothing is wrong. Still, Emily can't shake the sequence. Call light. Grace walking in with a syringe. Door closing. Quiet. Then the call for rapid response. It could be coincidence. It could be timing. But it doesn't happen just once. In the weeks that follow, Emily begins to notice the same pattern repeating. Room 412. A frail woman with metastatic cancer. Orders for comfort medication as needed. Emily passes by once and sees Grace inside, sitting on the edge of the bed, stroking the woman's hair while she whispers something in her ear. The woman, who was restless and agitated earlier, now looks strangely calm, too calm. Her breathing is shallow but regular. She moves on. She has her own patients to worry about. An hour later, a quiet alarm sounds from the monitor room. The tech calls out to the floor, "Hey, 412-02 is dropping." By the time Emily and another nurse reach the doorway, Grace is already there, hand on the woman's wrist, eyes on the monitor. "It's okay," Grace says softly, more to the family than to anyone else. It's time. She's letting go. The woman dies within minutes. Again, the chart later shows everything within policy. Medication as ordered, vital signs trending downwards anyway. No proof, just proximity. There's another thing Emily begins to see, the way Grace talks to patients when no one thinks they're listening. One night, while doing rounds, Emily slows near 414. The door is almost closed, but not enough to shut out the sound. Inside, Grace is sitting close to an elderly man whose breathing is labored. His eyes flutter open and closed, caught in that unclear space between pain and sleep. Grace's voice is hushed. "You don't have to keep fighting so hard," she murmurs. "You've done enough. Your family understands. It's okay to rest now." The man's hand twitches weakly against the sheet. Grace continues, her tone unbearably gentle. "I'll be right here," she says. "You won't be alone. I'll take care of everything." To anyone standing with the family, those words would sound like comfort, compassion. But to Emily, listening from the hall, it sounds like something else, an invitation. A few hours later, the man's name is moved on the board from the patient column to a small, discreet list the staff sometimes calls the sunrise list, those who didn't make it to morning. His family thanks Grace as they leave, eyes filled with grateful tears. "You were an angel to him. He was so afraid to die. You made it easier." Grace smiles softly, accepts their gratitude, and tells them she's just doing her job. Emily watches all of this happening with a tight feeling in her chest, because there's still nothing she can point to, nothing she can report without being accused of misunderstanding end-of-life care. Still, the pattern grows. One night, during a rare quiet stretch after 3 a.m., Emily finds herself alone at the nurse's station. The monitors hum, the overhead lights are dimmed, the whiteboard in front of her is filled with names, room numbers, color-coded magnets. She starts counting. In the last 3 weeks, how many patients have died on Grace's shifts? She pulls up archived census lists. Off-duty staff would call it morbid curiosity. But she's not doing this for morbid reasons. She's doing it because something feels wrong. The numbers don't scream anything obvious. People die on all shifts, days, evenings, nights. But there's a noticeable bump right there in the column labeled NOC, night shift, specifically on the nights when Grace is assigned to rooms with DNRs, or comfort measures only. You could still explain it away. They give her the hardest cases because she's good with families, the charge nurse had said once. They ask for her, another had added. You can't deny them that. Emily understands that. On some level it even makes sense, but sense doesn't make the hair on the back of her neck lie down. The first time she truly feels afraid is the night that she catches something off in a simple detail that should never be off – timing. It happens with a middle-aged patient in 416. He isn't end of life, he isn't palliative. He's sick but expected to recover. Post-surgical complications but stable. Talking, eating, laughing weakly with his wife earlier in the evening. He's not supposed to be near the edge. Emily has 416 on her list that night. Grace does not. Shortly after midnight, she gives him his scheduled medication, checks his vitals, and notes that he's tired but in decent spirits. "I just want to go home," he jokes weakly. "I'm starting to know this ceiling better than my own." Emily smiles, reassures him, and moves on. Around 1:30 a.m., she comes back by the room and sees the door mostly closed, just a sliver open. She hears a voice inside. Grace's voice. "You're doing so well, but sometimes the kindest thing is to let go before things get worse." She freezes in the doorway. That's not one of Grace's DNRs. That's not one of the families who asked for her. 416 is supposed to be getting better. She pushes the door open a little more. Inside, she sees Grace standing by the bedside, one hand on the patient's shoulder, the other reaching toward the IV pump. Emily clears her throat. "Everything okay in here?" She turns, not startled, just mildly surprised. "Oh, yes, he was anxious. I was just checking on him." The patient looks at Emily with glassy eyes. His speech is slurred. "I'm fine," he mumbles. "Angel nurse said I'm okay." Emily glances at the IV pump. The rate is normal. The bag is the same one she hung earlier. Nothing looks wrong. Still, the unease gnaws at her. She checks his chart later. No new PRN medication documented from Grace. No extra orders. And yet, by 3:05 a.m., he is significantly more drowsy than he should be. At 3:23 a.m., a rapid response is called. Unresponsive. Respiratory distress. They work on him hard this time. This isn't an expected death. This is not a peaceful passing. He doesn't make it. The cause is documented as unexpected clinical deterioration. A complication. It happens. The attending physician is frustrated but resigned. "These things can turn fast," he says. "We did everything we could." Emily stands near the doorway as Grace once again steps in to talk to the wife who is sobbing into her hands. Grace wraps an arm around her shoulders. "Sometimes their bodies are just too tired to keep fighting," she tells her. "He wasn't alone. He went peacefully." The wife clings to her like a lifeline. Emily's hands curl into fists inside her pockets. Because she was there. She saw Grace in the room earlier. She heard the words, "Sometimes the kindest thing is to let go before things get worse." And now he's dead. This time, Emily can't write it off so easily. This time, doubt hardens into suspicion. She starts to wonder if the term angel nurse means the same thing to everyone else that it means to Grace when she leans over a patient's bed and whispers, "It's okay to stop fighting." If the shift ends here, Emily—
The night that changes everything doesn't start out any different from the others. The census is heavy. 2 new admits from the ER. 1 post-op bleed. A confused elder who keeps trying to get out of bed. On the assignment sheet, Emily notices a familiar pattern. Grace has most of the hard rooms again. Room 410, Advanced COPD, DNR. Room 412, Septic, Guarded Prognosis. Room 418, Late-Stage Cancer, Comfort Measures Only. No one questions it. Put the angel nurse where she's needed, the charge nurse says, almost automatically. She's good with the tough cases. Emily, meanwhile, is given a mix of stable post-ops and 1 complicated diabetic patient. Busy, but manageable. She tells herself to focus on her own rooms, to stop counting how many angel rooms end up on the death list by sunrise. For most of the shift, she succeeds. Around 2:30 a.m., the unit is in that strange, suspended quiet where time feels slower. Lights are dimmed. Televisions glow in dark rooms. The steady chorus of monitors hums from down the hall. Emily is at the nurse's station, catching up on documentation. On the central monitor board, small green lines crawl across black screens, each one tied to a patient, each one a little electronic heartbeat. Her eyes drift to the square marked Room 412. It belongs to a man in his 60s named Martin Hale. He came in with sepsis from an untreated infection. He's very sick, but earlier in the evening, the attending physician told Emily he might still have a chance. "We'll know more by morning," he said. "He's not out of the woods, but he's fighting." He was tired, weak, but he spoke. He answered questions. He squeezed his daughter's hand. He wasn't at the end, not yet. Now, as Emily watches the monitor, his heart rate is elevated but steady. Blood pressure low, but not fatally low. She glances at the assignment sheet. 412 is one of Grace's rooms tonight. Her stomach tightens, just a little. A few minutes later, Emily gets up to do rounds. She moves from room to room, checking on her own patients first. Pain levels, IV sites, vital signs. By the time she's finished, it's just after 2:50 a.m. On her way back to the station, she passes by 412. The door is partially closed. The little "in use" light above the doorway is on. Grace is inside. Emily might have kept walking. On another night, she would have. But something stops her. A quiet, insistent feeling she's been trying to ignore for weeks. She slows her steps until she's just outside the door. From there, she can see a narrow slice of the room, the edge of the bed, the foot of the monitor, the corner of a chair. She hears Grace's voice. "You've done enough," Grace is saying, soft and even. "You don't have to keep fighting if you're tired." Martin's reply is faint, barely audible. "I don't want to leave them," he breathes. "You're not leaving them," Grace says. "You're just going where you don't hurt anymore. I'll make sure they're okay. I promise." Her tone is tender. It would be comforting if Emily didn't already know what tends to follow. Emily leans closer to the sliver of open space, keeping her body angled so she doesn't cast a shadow into the room. From this angle, she can see Grace's profile, the outline of Martin's arm on the bed, the glow of the monitor reflected in the window. Grace reaches up and adjusts something near the IV pole. Emily can't see exactly what she's doing, but she sees the way her fingers linger on one of the controls, how she shields the pump with her body, blocking the front panel from view. It's subtle, not dramatic, No one would call it suspicious if they weren't already looking for it. But Emily is. She looks instinctively toward the wall where the monitor sits. Heart rate elevated, blood pressure low but not fatally low, oxygen borderline but not crashing. Grace's hand is still near the tubing. Sometimes kindness, Grace murmurs, is not making someone struggle longer than they have to. Her other hand moves toward the monitor controls on the wall. Emily watches as Grace fingers the alarm buttons, tapping through settings with practiced ease. One by one, the small red icons that indicate audible alerts go dark. Heart rate alarms, blood pressure alarms, oxygen saturation alarms, all silenced. Nothing on the screen changes yet. The lines still move, the numbers still update. But if something shifts too quickly now, no loud beep will break the hallway's quiet. The only warning will be a silent change in digits that no one is watching because they trust the alarms to scream for them. Emily's heart starts to race. She knows alarms get silenced on purpose sometimes, for comfort, to avoid disturbing families in clear end-of-life situations. But this isn't that. There's no order changing Martin's status, no new note making him comfort only. He's precarious, but fighting. Inside the room, Grace leans in closer. Emily sees her pick up a small syringe from the bedside table. Again, the motion is ordinary. Nurses give medications constantly. So many syringes, flushes, routine doses. But this one Grace palms carefully, almost hiding it in her hand as she moves. She leans near the connection point in the IV line. Her body blocks Emily's view again. Emily can't see exactly what she's doing, but she hears the soft click of the line, the faint hiss of fluid moving faster than a gentle infusion. Martin's fingers twitch against the sheet. "Shh," Grace whispers, her voice thick with something that could be mistaken for emotion. "It's okay. I'm right here. You won't feel the worst of it. Just rest." Emily's skin crawls. Her training tells her to step in, to ask what's being given, why the alarms are off. Her fear tells her to stay very, very still, to keep watching, to know for sure. She does nothing. She just watches. The monitor numbers begin to shift. Heart rate starts to drift down. Not gradually, not like someone relaxing into sleep, but in odd, uneven drops. Blood pressure dips lower. Oxygen saturation begins to fall. The line that was shaky but consistent becomes less regular, spiked with strange gaps. No alarm sounds. No red light flashes. On the board at the nurse's station, no one is looking at 412. Grace stays at the bedside, her hand now resting over Martin's, her thumb rubbing slow circles into his skin, like she's soothing a child. "You've been so strong," she says softly. "They don't want to see you suffer. I promise, letting go is the kindest thing you can do now." Martin's chest rises, falls, rises again, each breath shallower than the last. Emily feels like she's underwater, watching this through thick glass. Her body won't move. Her voice won't work. She can't tell if it's because she's afraid of being wrong or because she's afraid of being right. The heart rate drops further. From the doorway sliver, Emily sees Grace's face briefly, lit by the monitor glow. There is no panic there, no urgency, just a calm, focused expression, like someone watching a task approach completion. For a moment, the numbers on the screen hold, one last fragile plateau. Then the rhythm breaks. The line stutters, becomes chaotic, then slows again. No alarm sound. Grace glances at the monitor, reaches up, and presses one more button. A second later, the green line on the screen slides into a flat horizon. A straight,
unbroken line. This time, no one shouts for help. There is no rush of feet in the hall, no crash cart. Just Grace, standing by the bed, her hand still on Martin's, her head bowed slightly. "Okay," she whispers. "There you go. It's over now." She reaches up, mutes the non-existent alarm completely, then finally turns toward the doorway. For one horrifying second, Emily thinks Grace is looking directly at her. Her heart stops. But Grace's gaze passes over the narrow opening without pausing. She doesn't seem to notice Emily standing in the shadowed hall. She walks to the door, opens it wider, and steps out with that same soft expression she always wears after a death, a mix of sadness and serenity. She sees Emily then. "Oh," Grace says quietly. "Hi, I was just with 412. Her voice is smooth, unbothered. "I think he's gone," she adds. "You might want—"
Emily doesn't sleep after that shift. She goes home, showers, stares at the bathroom tiles until the water runs cold, and replays every second she saw in room 412. The silenced alarms, the way the syringe disappeared into Grace's hand, the calm voice telling a dying man it was okay to stop fighting. By the time she lies down, the sky is already turning gray. Her alarm goes off what feels like minutes later. She almost calls out. Almost. But she doesn't. Instead, she goes back.
Emily doesn't file a formal report that week. She opens the incident form page on the computer more than once, cursor blinking in an empty text box. But every time she tries to type, the words feel flimsy. "What exactly did you see?" she imagines someone asking. Alarms turned off, a syringe, soft words, and then they died. On this floor, that's not a confession, it's a shift description. She closes the form each time without saving. The first real sign that something might be shifting comes from a direction she doesn't expect, the unit's rumor mill. It starts quietly. One morning, after a heavy stretch of nights, Emily overhears two nurses talking near the supply room. "Did you hear?" one says. "Admin pulled some numbers on night shift deaths." "Yeah," the other replies. "Risk management wanted trends. Family complaints are up." "About who?" "They didn't say." Emily keeps her eyes on the label gun in her hand, but her ears sharpen. She knows there haven't been direct complaints about Grace. Families love her. If anything, they send thank you emails. But statistics don't read thank you notes. They read patterns. And somewhere, on a spreadsheet in an office far from the 4th floor, someone must have noticed the same bump Emily did. Deaths. Night shift. Certain rooms. Certain initials. A few days later, the charge nurse calls a quick huddle before shift. "Just a reminder," she says, "about documentation around end of life. We're tightening up how we chart comfort measures, DNR discussions, things like that. Admin is taking a closer look at our numbers." There's a wave of groans. "More charting," someone mutters. "Just be specific," the charge continues. "Who was in the room? What was discussed? What the family understood? If you titrate anything, make sure it's clearly within orders. They want everything clean." Emily feels a cold thread of understanding slip through her. This isn't just about numbers. Someone is worried about liability, about the optics of too many deaths clustered on nights where the angel nurse is on duty. Grace doesn't react much to the new push. If anything, her charting becomes even more meticulous. Her notes expand. Patient appeared uncomfortable, verbalized desire for relief. Family aware of poor prognosis, stated they did not want patient to suffer. Discussed likely progression with attending, agreed focus on comfort. Everything she writes is technically true. No one can argue with a sentence like, patient expressed fear of prolonged suffering. The question Emily keeps asking herself is, what did they say right after that? And who is going to write that down? Emily tries subtly to raise concerns, not accusations, just questions. One night, after a particularly rough shift, when 2 patients on Grace's list died within hours of each other, Emily approaches the charge nurse carefully. "Do you ever worry," she begins, "that we lean too hard into comfort care? That sometimes we decide how fast things go?" The charge nurse, exhausted and signing off on narcotic counts, doesn't look up. "This is the hard floor, Emily. People come here to die. We can't control that. We can only control whether they're in pain." "That's not what I mean," Emily says. "I mean when someone might still have time, when it feels like we're pushing." The charge nurse sighs and finally looks at her. "Is this about Grace?" she asks. Emily's heart stutters. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," she says quietly. For a moment, Emily thinks this is it, that the charge nurse is going to confirm her fears, that there's already a whisper investigation, that someone above them is drawing the same lines. Instead, she rubs her forehead and says, "I've seen nurses burn out on this floor because they can't handle watching long, ugly deaths. Grace is one of the few who can sit with it. Families love her. Do you know how rare that is?" "That's part of the problem," Emily says, her voice low. No one wants to look too closely at someone they're grateful for. The charge's eyes sharpen. "Careful," she says. "Accusing someone of crossing a line like that is serious. You need more than feelings." "I watched her turn off alarms. I watched her—" "Within parameters," the charge interrupts. "Comfort care? DNR? You know alarms get silenced in those cases. You know we titrate meds. You know context matters." Emily's mouth goes dry. "I think she's speeding them up," she says. "There's a pattern. You can see it." The charge holds her gaze for a long, heavy moment. Finally, she says, "If you believe a crime is being committed, you know the process. You don't come to me, you go to compliance, to risk, to the board." Her tone makes it clear what that would mean. War. Not just with one nurse, but with the entire structure that built the angel nurse myth and benefits from it. "Just remember," the charge adds, "if you go that route and they don't find anything, it will follow you, everywhere you work." The message is clear. Think very, very carefully before you try to drag an angel out of the light and into an investigation. A few weeks later, something changes. It's small at first, a rumor that Grace has been asked to float more often, to other units, different floors, ICU one night, step down another, occasional assignment to the ER. "She's so good with families," someone says. "Admin wants her where she can help more people." Emily hears a different translation in those words. Admin wants to dilute the pattern, spread it out, make the numbers harder to connect. Then, one evening, Emily arrives for shift and finds the schedule whiteboard updated. A thin yellow line is drawn through Grace's name for the next 2 weeks. LOA, it says in small letters. Leave of absence. Vacation? Asks someone. Administrative stuff, another replies. Education, policy review, something like that. No one knows for sure, or if they do, they're not saying. In the official story, nothing dramatic happens. There's no big public accusation, no police, no headlines. Just a quiet note in a staff meeting about reviewing practices around end-of-life care and standardizing how we communicate with families during decline. Extra mandatory education modules appear in everyone's inbox. Ethics in palliative settings, alarm management and patient safety. People complain about the extra training. They click through slides, they answer quiz questions, they move on. No one says, this is about the angel nurse. This is about the bodies that started to pile up. But Emily feels it written between every line. Months pass. New nurses arrive. Old ones transfer out. Patients come and go. Grace returns to the schedule eventually, but not the way she was before. She's no longer assigned to the densest cluster of DNRs. She floats. She helps. She precepts. Her presence is still calm, still soft, but quieter somehow. Less central. The angel nickname fades a little. People still say it, but with less frequency, and more under their breath, as if aware now that some stories draw the wrong kind of attention. Emily doesn't know what was said behind closed doors. She doesn't know if a quiet audit found just enough anomalies to make someone uncomfortable, but not enough to risk a scandal. She doesn't know if Grace was ever questioned directly, or if the hospital chose the path of least resistance. Redirect, reassign, hope the pattern gets lost in the noise. What Emily does know are the things she saw with her own eyes. Alarms turned off in rooms where hope hadn't fully left. Syringes palmed like secrets. Soft words poured into ears of people who might have lived days, weeks, maybe even longer.
In most hospital stories, the danger is something you can see. A monitor alarming, a code being called, a number on a lab report highlighted in red. But the truth is, the scariest part of a hospital at night isn't always what shows up on a screen. Sometimes, it's what never gets written down. The conversations no one documents. The moments just before the alarms are turned off. The choices made in dim rooms by people the system trusts a little too much to do what's best. Outsiders like to imagine monsters in places like this. But most of the time, no one involved thinks they're doing anything wrong. They think it's mercy, compassion, letting nature take its course. And maybe they're right. Or maybe, hidden behind soft words and clean notes, there are more angel nurses than anyone wants to admit. People who would never call themselves killers, but who sleep better at night believing they gave death a nudge before things got uglier. If you've ever spent time in a hospital at night, as a patient, a visitor, or a worker, you already know how thin the line can feel between trust and fear when you hand your life to someone in scrubs and hope they're exactly who everyone says they are. If you made it to the end of this story, you're definitely one of us. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever worked a night shift in a hospital, nursing home, or anywhere and felt like someone was just a little too comfortable being in the room when people slipped away? And if you want more hospital night shift horror stories like this one, make sure you're subscribed, turn on notifications, and we'll see you on the next night shift.